Got it.
Welcome to the Melbourne Theosophical Society, where we're hosting Dr. Golding's We Are All from Spirit. Before we start, I'd like to present the Theosophical Society objects. To form a nucleus of the universal brotherhood of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, caste, or colour. To encourage the study of comparative religion, philosophy, and science. To investigate unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in the human being. So we're now today at the final session number 4 in this 4-part seminar, which has been taking place during October, November 2023. All sessions will be made available on the Melbourne Theosophical Society's meetup page until the end of December. And then we will be adding them to the National Melbourne Audio-Visual site from January. So they will be available, and we'll send this out within our newsletter so everybody's made available. So seminar 4 is entitled Effects and Transformations and the Power of Love, and we welcome back Dr. Goldin.
Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen to get the PowerPoints up. Here we are. There we are. And I'm just going to put these pictures down here so I can see the screen a bit better. Okay. All right, so now I think we're set. So thank you for the introduction. And today, the 4th seminar from We Are All from Spirit, Complex Concepts on Consciousness and Manifestation Simplified. And okay, plan B. Okay, so my page down wasn't working there for a minute. So the first seminar in October was the Theosophy of How Life Manifests. Seminar number 2 was on higher consciousness and human being. And then the last one, seminar 3, was how to understand and interpret higher consciousness, interpret spiritual, metaphysical, or transpersonal experiences, which are states of higher consciousness, versus psychotic, and versus mundane, with a lot of different examples of those experience case examples as well. And today, we're following in sequence, although these 4 seminars do overlap as well. We're going to talk about the effects of these spiritual experiences and states of higher consciousness, and the transformations that these people from my PhD research and my clinical practice, the transformations it had for them. And then the second part of this seminar is the power of love, which actually takes us right back to the beginning, seminar 1, the Theosophy of How Life Manifests. So it goes in full circle. As I say, these overlap. You can watch them individually, and that is fine if you just saw one and not the other 3. But if you do want to watch them, the preferred way is in sequence, seminar 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that order, and that way you would get the most out of it. Okay, so let's start on this one, Effects and Transformations from Spiritual Experiences and the Power of Love. So this is divided into 3 parts. First of all, the impact from spiritual experiences and case examples. And part 2 is the power of love. And then part 3 is the summary and conclusions. And there will be time for questions and answers at the end. So before we actually begin this one, I just wanted to do 2 PowerPoint slides reviewing a little bit about the spiritual experiences from seminar 3. So I talked about the phenomena, how these experiences actually are experienced, the phenomena of spiritual experiences. And I put them into 3 categories. I called them the lesser ones, if you will, subtle spiritual experiences. And then I coined a new phrase, the inner body experiences, IBE. That's my term. And then finally, number 3 is the outer body experiences, OBE. Some say outer body experiences, and others will say out of body experiences. So those are the 3 categories of spiritual experiences. Then we charted them and compared them against one another and against mundane experiences and psychotic experiences. So that's what we did last time. And just a quick review of these, because now this seminar, we're talking about the impact from these spiritual experiences on these people and how it changed, transformed their sense of self and their sense of life. So the IBE is predominantly, you have the physical sense of self. So the first category I called undifferentiated personal experiences, because the person doesn't feel different. The physical personal self doesn't really feel different. And an example of an undifferentiated personal experience is intuition. It just kind of happens. You don't really feel any different, but you've got kind of this knowledge that comes in. Okay, and the second one is I called a differentiated personal experience, because the person, the physical self, does feel a little bit different. And a couple of examples that I gave is where the people actually felt an expanded sense of self. They felt that they were actually like part of the air. So if you review seminar 3, that will remind you about those. And then the OBEs compared to IBE, these are predominantly a spiritual sense rather than sensing the physical sense and the physical environment. So the first category of the 4 here, I called an undifferentiated soul experience, because it's purely just a soul experience. And the example that I gave, a couple of them, so this is a non-dual experience of spirituality, you as soul as spirituality. An example that a case study was like I was God, the person had that experience that they were a part of God. And this is similar to back to the very beginning, the I Am That book and Nisargadatta Maharaj, where he's talking about the I Am. So this I called an undifferentiated soul experience. It's nothing but the I am. There is nothing but, it's a non-dual experience. Now, these 3 here, the differentiated soul experiences, they are dual, but they're dual in the spiritual dimensions, not in the, except for this one down here, not in the physical dimensions. So the first one was differentiated soul experience, soul as other. So as a spiritual soul, and this was an experience that I shared with you, one of mine, is where I felt that I merged with the music. I did not feel and sense anything in the physical dimension of its physical reality, physical dimension of existence. I only felt spiritual, and I didn't feel like I was myself. I felt like I was the music. I was the music and the dance. So that's soul as other. The next one, a differentiated soul experience, but soul as self. One of the examples that I gave, a person was having an NDE, a near-death experience, and they were aware of themselves as a soul, and their soul moving around in this spiritual dimension. So the soul was self, and they were trying to get to the light, and they were seeing these other spiritual things, landscapes, etc., in a spiritual dimension. And then finally, the 4th one, the last one here, this is a differentiated both soul and personal experience. So this one, you kind of get it all, and I've had these experiences myself. So you are aware of yourself as a spiritual soul, and you are aware that as your soul, you are in a spiritual dimension. So you're aware of that. That's the soul part and the spiritual part. But from the personal side, you also are aware of yourself as a physical being. But as that physical being, in my experience, I could also see my soul self. So it's aware of self as physical, aware of self as soul, aware of the spiritual dimension and the physical dimension. So it's quite bizarre in a way. Now, if I can just simplify that, I gave one slide last time, a preview on spiritual experiences. So the spiritual experiences often are categorized as including near-death experience, out-of-body experience, intuition, spiritual dreams. So an example would be dreaming of contacting deceased loved ones, having conversations with them, reuniting with them, premonitions, and more. So it's a whole bunch of different kinds of spiritual experiences. And the ones that I said last week or last time gave you a fairly broad range, but there's more. And every time there is a type of, especially out-of-body spiritual experience, there's many different varieties there. Okay, so now the profound spiritual experiences are generally perceived by these people in my research, and as my clients, they perceived it this way as well as they started to learn about it more, as a movement of their consciousness, of their kind of mind, a movement of their consciousness outside of their physical boundaries of the body. So it's moving out, or an expansion of consciousness where the self merged with other in a spiritual realm. And then the subtle spiritual experiences are perceived as a sense of awe, that life has a spiritual flow and energy, and coincidences and synchronicities that sneak up on us are some examples. One of the other examples people said, well, even brushing my teeth, because spirituality and spirit is in everything, then even brushing my teeth would be a spiritual experience. So it's basically spirituality is there all the time. Okay, so now let's go on to this week's subject. And this is about the impact from spiritual experiences. And first of all, I would just like to share this quote that I found from Celestine Vision. And here it says that people describe the experience of spirituality, of a spiritual realm, as, quote, no matter what is happening, I feel safe, secure, and cared for, as though a never-ending, pure, and complete love is staring true through my eyes. Complete love staring true through my eyes. And this is consistent with what was provided in the last seminar as well, that pure consciousness and is wisdom, is love, is truth, and that flows down through to us, down even to our lower mind and physical body. So impact of spiritual experiences, what I found is that I could put these into 5 different categories of positive outcomes and 3 different categories of negative outcomes. These negative outcomes basically were more like side effects. You know, when you take, you get a medication to help fix something, the physical body, but then there's a side effect. Oh, you're really, really thirsty from the medication. And that often these are just side effects. Okay, so that's another way of thinking of these categories of negative outcomes. So let's just qualify these 5 categories of the positive outcomes, and then I'll give you some descriptions. So the first one is perceived as beneficial and part of self-development. The second one is gain knowledge. The third one, finding purpose, direction, and meaning in life. The fourth one, improve emotional well-being. And the 5th one, loss of fear of death, and also the loss of fear of life. So they weren't afraid of life so much. Now, these do overlap in giving the descriptions and the examples. You'll find that mostly there will be a combination of categories, but having them divided into these 5 like this helps to identify them perhaps a little bit more easily. So next, descriptions of these 5 categories and case examples and quotes. So the first one, perceived as beneficial and part of self-development. So the description is greater understanding of self, greater understanding of others, and a greater understanding of reality. And actually it could be realities, the personal physical reality and the spiritual reality. And so here's a quote from one of the participants in the research. So it was Arlene, this one, and she said, I realized that I wasn't a human being just struggling to find some sort of spirituality. I was actually a spiritual being now, expressing in this human form, and the real me is the spirit, not the human part. That's just a very transient part. So from her experiences, she got this greater experiential understanding of that. Even if she had have read it and if people read it in books, etc., when you actually have the experience of it, it's a greater way of understanding this. Okay, number two, that was one. Number two, there's another one after this. And this is the description is increased vitality and well-being, and the well-being as mental or physical or both mental and physical. And so this is the quote. Since I've become more interested in my spirituality, it has made me more positive. I experience deeper joy, also deeper sadness. But I find that it really has stabilized me. I'm not irrational. I don't find that my mood swings as much as it did during my previous years when I had a lot of confusion about Hinduism and Christianity. I have stabilized and it has heightened my emotional experience. So you might remember this was Lisa, a 24-year-old Hindu background living in Sydney and Melbourne. And so she studied, she was the top student in both Hinduism and Christianity religion. And what happened for her is the school, even though she had the top mark, did not give her the honor and the prize that was associated with that. They gave it to somebody else. So she had a lot of confusion. You know, this is Christianity, but you're actually where's the truth in it? So she learned a lot from that, and so she learned to be able to stabilize her emotions. So the third one here is enhanced self-confidence, and here's the description. I think it gives me much more fruition in life, much more strength. That's for sure, because I would not still be at university. So this was one of the middle-aged female research participants that was studying at university and going through a little bit of a struggle. And it was the spirituality, her belief and her experiences in spirituality that actually helped to inspire her and to keep giving her that confidence and vitality to follow through. So another one is, so this is a quote. Some of it is pretty self-explicit, the stuff that she gets, the meaning, the understanding that she gets from some of these spiritual experiences. Some of it is pretty self-explicit. Some of it is intuitive. Some of it is more of a pattern. You can see a pattern going on here. So you know that when next time that situation comes up, you know what is likely to unfold. So it's very practical knowledge. And that helps her with the confidence to be able to, okay, now I understand I've got this practical knowledge what to do if something like that arises next time. So again, as you are practicing your own spiritual self-development techniques, the more you are aware of the varieties of spiritual experiences, the impacts that it has on you, the meaning from it, how it can help you in the future, the more that you kind of analyze it, become your own analyst, the more that you will be able to get out of it and utilize your spiritual development. So that was the first category. The second category is to gain knowledge. And here, the description is individuals can know by experience what they had previously known by description. And the quote is, well, it can be very practical knowledge that I gain, okay? Knowledge that I need to know, that I need to understand, or it can be seeing the world in a different way or understanding, oh, right. So that's what's going on here. Oh, that is what was happening. That is what was needed. There is also sometimes knowledge to give you confidence, like to act in a way that you need to, so it can inform your behavior. So again, you can see how these overlap, these different experiences. Generally, you get a lot of the positive outcomes, these varieties of positive outcomes from one spiritual experience. Okay, the second example here in description, it can give you creative inspiration. And so that can be a sudden illumination, creative insights, and problem solving. And here is the quote. For me, one strong change was where a problem pops up, there is a lot more relaxedness around it. And she's thinking, oh, well, so this is the way it is. So what are the options? It's like dealing with it in a greater context and seeing it of the time as a process, just being a big problem or a little problem. So even if there is anxiety there is a relaxedness around having the anxiety. Because yes, you will feel pain if someone hurts you. You will feel anxious if your mother dies or whatever, but it's like an acceptance. So therefore, the tightness around it goes. And she qualified later her word relaxedness. She made that up. And I've, of course, kept it in there because this is a quote, but I kind of like that term, that there is a more relaxedness around your experiences of when you're trying to solve problems or going through a little bit of a crisis. So the third one under gain knowledge here is similar to the very first one, but only it's more profound. So here you experience or gain knowledge about reality or God or something else that could not be experienced otherwise. So this is more the profound, from a profound spiritual experience. And this was Arlene, whom you met through the last seminar, so to speak. And she said, when I had my mystical experiences, and she had several, she said, and I had one very grand one. She called this one a grand one. It wasn't her near-death experience, but it was a little bit similar to it. Her near-death experience happened at a different time. So I had a very grand one when I was about 42. And in that, I went straight back to God. And I discovered to my amazement that I was God, which sounds very silly. It was as if I knew absolutely everything that God knew. I knew why the planets were up in the sky. I knew the same power that was going through the planets, and everything else was expressing through me. And I felt that I went home. I became a part of God. I became one with God, and that I knew everything that God knew. So this example was given in the previous seminar too, and so now we're using it as a example of how she has gained knowledge and how she felt about it. So the third category, finding purpose, direction, and meaning in life. And here it helps to resolve personal dilemmas, gaining greater compassion for humankind and the earth. You feel a unity with the whole of creation, and you think more holistically. So I've got, those are kind of the descriptions. And here is an example. Now, this fellow, Gary, this was when he was about 18 years old that this experience occurred for him. And at the time of my research, he was in his 40s, and so had learned a lot more then. So he was relating this back to me as a more mature and a much more knowledgeable person. So he said, I had a very dramatic realization on that night. I'm just going to explain a little bit more. So he was in his teens, somewhere around 17, 18, somewhere around there. And he was going through what a lot of teenagers do around that time, 18, 19, 20, 21. They're looking for spirituality. They're looking for meaning in life, and they're looking for direction. They're questioning that. And he was doing that as well. And he had a big kind of dilemma where he just felt really lost. And so now I'm going to read his quote. He said, I had a very dramatic realization on that night that there was an enormous gulf between myself and God. And if anyone was going to bridge that gulf, it would be Christ and what he did on the cross. So that night, I just prayed in a way that I never prayed before, that God would forsake me. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more background. So he came from he lived with his mother, and his mother was Christian. The father wasn't, lived elsewhere. And even the mother, although Christian, they weren't hugely religious. He wasn't really brought up with a lot of religion, but somehow he had this feeling that there was this great big gap between himself and God. And then his friends took him to this church. And this is where he felt that there was this great big gulf where Christ, because the sermon that was given was on Christ on the cross. Okay, so that's the background here. Now, these next two are the important things. That was more the background. So Gary says, all I can remember is that when I got up the next day, my life was different. So much so that I actually asked people I knew who were practicing Christians to help explain to me what was happening, because I didn't understand the shifts that were taking place in me. And to give a couple of examples, I had an enormous amount of anger and hostility that would lead at times to physical violence. So he beat people up a bit, okay? He also said, I found that I just didn't have those feelings anymore. Didn't want to be violent anymore. And secondly, I was quite a bull artist. So I found that I went to the people that I had been bullying for years, telling lies, bullying for years, and just told them that all those stories about X, Y, and Z, well, I made them up because I liked pressing your buttons or something like that. So there were some big shifts, and that's kept on going. So as a teenager, up until that time when he was in his 40s, he lost that hostility. He said he was sorry, and he became a different person. He found that life had a nicer meaning and a nicer direction. And he gained compassion as well. So another example, and this is where we would be describing it under gaining greater compassion for humankind and the earth. And here she said, this quote, I think it made me a lot better person. And then after my wonderful grand experience of the same lady Arlene, I think I changed a lot in myself, in that I became much more accepting of others. I had always been a very critical person. You know, I thought that I knew the right way to live, and why doesn't everybody live the right way, my way? Okay. After that, I became much more loving and much more accepting. I felt that it didn't matter who it was, I had to accept the person. I didn't have to accept their behavior, but I had to accept the person, because I always felt that there was a connecting, that I was connecting with their inner spirit. Yes, their inner spirit. So I feel that without those experiences, those mystical experiences, I don't think I would have done nearly as good a job as I did working in welfare. So she had to tell you a bit further, she had to accept these people that were addicted to drugs, street drugs, alcohol, and things like that, and not criticize them, but be there to help them. So she gained a lot more compassion and understanding. So a more holistic perception, and she could feel that spiritual unity. Okay, so this is number 4 of the categories of positive outcomes, and this is improved emotional well-being. And the description here would be more peace of mind. And the quote, the example from the case study is, there are the experiences and their beliefs are very important for my emotional well-being. It has helped enormously this year, I'd say. It helps me to get things in perspective, I think, and that's really important. As we know, if our emotions are all over the place, it's very hard to be able to, life becomes chaotic, and you get really, really out of balance. So to have more peace of mind is a very good thing. The second description here is more aware of the sacredness and development of all. So the quote is, I get hurt very easily because someone will do something and I think, why? I would never do that to you. How could you do that to me? and I've often felt very hurt. What I've realized now is it doesn't mean there is anything wrong with me. For years, I used to think, what's wrong with me that these people could do these things? But everyone doesn't have a spiritual understanding, and they don't have the mutual respect for other human beings. After years of internalizing that, I know who I am. It's not that I have a shield, but I know who I am. My spiritual understanding protects me. And another example, number 3, this is providing a sense of meaning and purpose under emotional well-being. And the quote is, in one way, because you're more connected with your feelings, and I feel that I know what suits my needs, so I can get purpose. But in the other, because it creates an acceptance, it's not like I struggle as much to find a purpose. It's like there is a purpose in everything that I do. So very helpful for her. And number 4, under improved emotional well-being, the description is better able to rise above contradictions and conflicts. And the quote, the case example, they're saying definitely, in the sense that I still feel all the same emotions that I always ever did. Can you hear the siren? We're wishing those people well. Yeah, okay, now the noise is gone. Okay, in the sense that I still feel all the same emotions that I always ever did, but it helps me to come to terms with a lot of things a lot more easily and helps me to move on from negative experiences more easily. So it's certainly good for my emotional well-being. Okay, and the 5th category is loss of fear of death and loss of fear of life. And Lisa's near-death experience is the first example. And she says, one thing that I learned, and it's very important probably, the fear of death was overcome. Not because I thought I was going to die, but because I feel that when you are meant to go, if your time has come, through some bizarre circumstances, you'll be taken. And I think that God has a purpose for us. To summarize it for you, I don't fear death. I lost the fear of death. And the second one, and this one is from Arlene, and she says, and I never, ever again felt afraid of death. I just knew, oh, well, that's what happens. You die, you close your eyes here, and you open them up there. And everything is wonderful. And that gave me great strength. And it wouldn't matter what happened to me, no matter what anybody did or what I had to endure. I knew that that was there. There was that was a greater reality, which was behind this seeming everyday reality, which isn't really reality at all. That's how I feel anyway. And this is also from Arlene. So she continued later on and said, but I'm a very much stronger, a very more expressive person. And I really do accomplish much more now. And I have a great joy in life now. Things still go wrong, but there is that joy in life that I didn't have as a younger person. So I've lost all that fear and all the discouragement, all the what ifs, and that sort of thing. And I feel very much as if I'm going on my planned path. So here she's kind of lost her fear of death, but also lost her fear and anxiety relating to life. It's also a realization that death is just a transition, a loss of the physical body, but not the soul. So that's what they also indicated. There's somebody wanting to come in, being admitted in. Okay. So we'll just summarize these 5 categories. It's perceived as beneficial and part of self-development. People gained knowledge, finding purpose, direction, and meaning in life, improved emotional well-being, and loss of the fear of death and life. So those are the 5 categories of positive outcomes, which basically was, for a lot of them, a lot of psychological and spiritual development. So let's look at the 3 categories of negative outcomes. The first one is categorized as frightening. I'll give you case examples after. The second one, categorized as misunderstood, or little thing shocked. And the third one, changes in relationships. So those were the negative outcomes that these people shared with me regarding their various spiritual experiences. So the first one, frightening. So this is a quote here, and the person is saying, emotionally, I think it's, and this person's name is L. And she came from lived in Australia, but came from a Asian background as well that was into Buddhism. But she didn't really get all the support that she needed. And so when she was having these kinds of experiences, even her mom that was a practicing Buddhist wasn't able to help her. So Elle had said, emotionally, I think it's important to have a healthy sense of identity. And sometimes when you're sort of zipping in between, usually zipping back in time and forward in time, part of my spiritual experiences have been relating to archetypes, many different archetypes, many different lifetimes. And I can emotionally have a roller coaster rides from that. Who am I? What am I? What am I doing? That sort of thing. Coming to grips with sometimes having to consciously put myself back into this one dimension, one identity, rather than being too far spread out. I mean, it's necessary to spread out because that's part of the spiritual experience. But that does at times affect my emotional well-being. So it was frightening for her. Another example, which I didn't write down here, but it was from a fellow that I don't think I've used in these examples before, but he actually had more drug experiences. And I'm not talking medical drugs, I'm talking the street psychotic drugs. And for him, it was frightening because he would go into these other dimension and he was scared. What if I don't have a body to come back into? What if I'm lost in that? Whereas this person here, L, it was frightening for her, but she did her experiences. It was only this one fellow that was using drugs on occasion to actually have these spiritual experiences, and they were frightening for him. But she would go into, and she would kind of experience relating to and communicating with what she called other entities, her guides and this and that. And she just didn't understand it. And she didn't have the support to be able to learn to understand it until much later she became more aware. So frightening, you can be afraid to share your experience with health professionals, friends, or families. Afraid that you're going crazy as well because you just don't understand it. It's frightening. So misunderstood is the second negative category. And so this example, this quote here was from a person that was in the hospital for surgery. And she said, and I didn't say a word to anyone because I thought, oh, people will think I'm a crank. The doctor came to see me and I thought, well, I'll see if I can get some sort of sense out of him. So I said something happened to me while I was unconscious, and he didn't want to hear a word about it. And he made very light of it. And he said, oh, you only lost consciousness for a very short time. And he was so evasive that I couldn't say anything more. And he told me that I had a very bad kidney infection, which had been untreated all that time. So he just kind of shuffled her off. And she felt very misunderstood, and that he didn't even care to understand. So that's not very nice. So people will think I'm a liar, she thought, and people will ridicule her, no social support. The third negative category is changes in relationships. And this is Arlene. And her experience, she said, well, with my near-death experience, there was a negative in that it suddenly threw me onto a different plane. Now, I'd been living very happily with a certain group of people, doing certain things, thinking that I was experiencing all of reality. And suddenly I was thrown out of it. So that isolated me. And I found it very difficult at first to live in my everyday reality, knowing that there was this other reality there. And I suddenly felt estranged and on a different plane to other people. And that was very, very hard to really come to grips to. So she felt very different to other people, feelings of isolation, and a sense of meaningless, which you'll see further down here. So she continued, well, I tried to just get on with my everyday life, but I found it very, very difficult. And everything became meaningless. I mean, I had loads of friends, loads of girlfriends, and I do all the usual things with them, but think, oh God, this is meaningless. We're sitting here doing all this chit chat when there's all this wonderful stuff out there that nobody knows about. And I can't say anything because I knew they wouldn't understand. So it was very separating, isolating, and that was very difficult. Okay, the last one that she says here is regarding her marriage, changes in her relationship. She said, and also in my marriage with my grand experience, not the near-death experience, but the grand experience, I eventually told my husband, but he didn't want to really know about it. He always said, well, you're an honest person. I know something has happened. Obviously, it's the truth to you, but I don't want to know about it. So that was also a separating, isolating thing. It destroyed the sense of togetherness, I guess. It just knocks you into a different category. And I can tell you that later on, they actually divorced. I don't know exactly why, but I know from the follow through that there was a divorce. So if we summarize these three categories, it was frightening. They felt misunderstood and changes in relationships. So those are kind of can be some of the side effects from having these different spiritual experiences. Okay, so now we're going to go on to part 2, and this is the power of love. And this kind of takes us full circle back to how life manifests, okay? So, and there I was talking and giving a lot of quotes from Nisargadatta Maharaj, quotes from his book, I Am That. So I put that here. So here again, we're going back to some of his quotes that I haven't said before. So this is regarding love and desire, regarding manifestation. And the question is, between the spirit and the body, is it love that provides the bridge? And Maharaj says, what else? Mind creates the abscess, the heart crosses it. And the questioner says, to what extent, excuse me, is desire a causal factor? Excuse me. And Maharaj says, one of the many causes, it's one of the many factors. But for everything, there are innumerable causal factors. But the source of all that is the infinite possibility, the supreme reality, which is in you and which throws its power and light and love on every experience. So desire is part of it. But this source is not a cause, and no cause is a source. Because of that, I say everything is uncaused. You may try to trace how a thing happens, but you cannot find out why a thing is as it is. A thing is as it is because the universe is as it is. And remember before he was talking that there still is some mystery here. We don't know it all. There is a mystery force here as well. Okay, love is life and life is love. I said that the other way around. So Maharaj says here, there is nothing wrong with duality as long as it does not create conflict. Multiplicity and variety without strife is joy. In pure consciousness, there is light. And for warmth, contact is needed, thus creativity. He says, above the unity of being is the union of love, and love is the meaning and the purpose of duality. He also says, give up the bondage of self-concern and be what you are, intelligence and love in action, just in this particular vehicle, in this particular time. He goes on to say, truth and love are man's real nature, and mind and heart are the means of its expression. Your real being is love itself, and your many loves are its reflections according to the situation at the moment. And remember, before we had pure consciousness, and it's reflected out into what I called a secondary consciousness, reflections there. So the love and the desire and the want for warmth and contact can be the tools, I suppose, for creating life, along with other mysterious godlike powers. So finally, he says, there is a vastness beyond the farthest reaches of mind, and that vastness is my home. That vastness is myself, and that vastness also is love. So this is where he's talking about pure consciousness, where he can be in pure consciousness beyond his smaller mind into the greater mind that is pure consciousness, which is also love. So here we've got another little quote. He says, go beyond, go back to the source, go to the self with capital S, go to the self that is the same whatever happens. Your weakness is due to your conviction that you were born into the world. In reality, the world is ever recreated in you and by you. See everything as emanating from the light, which is the source of your own being. You will find that in that light, there is love and infinite energy. So supreme source is love. And my first comment here is that we resonate to love. Okay, we resonate to love, not spirit, to the love infused in spirit. And I really liked this concept. When we get further, I'll give you the where this comes from. Because it didn't come from Theosophy, it came from some of my other psychology readings. So we resonate to the love infused in spirit. So spirit is the resonation of love, and this vibration, which is the matrix of vibes that precedes energy mass and forms into elemental mass. So love and spirit vibrating precedes to the adamantine particles, which is elemental and creates mass. So the concept here is there is a background of potential that precedes all energy mass, that vibrating down through here, creating, and consciousness is created. So this is from Glenda Green, and the book is called Love Without End. And she was describing these triangles here. I've got a little bit more that explains more later. So here, only when spirit and matter come together, spirit and matter come together, consciousness is born. And you, all of us, are a speck of this consciousness. We are a speck from this pure source, this pure love. So before, the quote was also, beyond the unity of being is the union of love. Love is the meaning of purpose and duality. Love wants to be expressed in life down here, consciousness. Now, this is from the Secret Doctrine, and again on manifestation. And we've got here, I've got spirit on this one side and matter on the other side, with it creating consciousness. So matter is the reflecting surface in which the one becomes many. So the pure source, pure consciousness reflects itself, shines its light, and it becomes menti because it's of the potential and then the realized. So down here, we'll look at this first. Spirit and matter are not independent realities. They are connected. They are two aspects of the supreme source. The contrast of these two aspects is essential to the existence of the manifested universe. That's necessary, that flow there. And the secret doctrine states that without spirit, matter could only be an empty abstraction. And without matter, spirit would have no vehicle through which to express itself. So the two are equally necessary to the emergence of consciousness. So this is our ordinary consciousness coming down into the world manifestation. So further, again, from the secret doctrine, it's a little bit like a coin, two sides to a coin, the spirit and the matter. So spirit and matter are like two sides of a coin. Together they manifest life. And life is another name for life, we can say, is consciousness, this kind of consciousness. No consciousness, this doesn't happen, no life. No coins, no life as well too. So another way to look at this, and I'm going to give you another analogy here, is we've got matter and spirit together, that symbol there, sort of yin and yang, matter and spirit that form consciousness. So consciousness and life are identical. They mean the same. No life without consciousness, no consciousness without life. So an analogy using the circle is consciousness is inward here and life is outward. So consciousness down here expands out and creates all this complexity of life on the outward side. This is the seed. This is sprouted to life out here. Okay, so now a little bit further with the same kind of analogy. We've got cosmic ideation on this side, and we've got cosmic substance on this side. On this side, we have spirit, this side we have matter, two sides of the coin, remember? And the subject and the object. And we talked before about life and Fohat being a bridge here. So life is a bridge by which the ideation, the ideas in divine thought are impressed on the cosmic substance as the laws of nature. And remember in one of the seminars I gave, I think the very first one, and I also talked about what some people call the laws of nature, the laws of attraction. So that could be one of the laws of nature, okay, besides physical nature and gravity and other laws. So this bridge of impression, ideation, this bridge is called Fohat. It's a cosmic electricity that reacts between spirit and matter. And our higher vehicles, monad, emanating from the basic duality and vivified by Fohat, our lower vehicles, the human, lower vehicles, reflect the higher. So from pure consciousness reflected out into secondary consciousness, where there is the world, and this is where we are experiencing life. This is where we are matter and object. So in the field of manifestation, we find that there is a relationship between cosmic ideation and cosmic substance. Consequently, the basic duality becomes a trinity. Basic duality with Fohat electrifying us, so to speak, that bridge there, and we have life. Is there somebody that is wanting to be admitted? It looks like that's been up there on my screen for a while. To admit somebody, thank you. Okay. So, okay, in reality, in pure consciousness, there is only the source, dark in itself, making everything shine. Unperceived, it causes perception. Unfelt, it causes feeling. Unthinkable, it causes thought. Non-being, it gives birth to being. I think this was from Maharaj quotes as well. Okay. In pure consciousness, there is light. And for warmth, and I actually looked up warmth, what would be some other meanings of warmth. They use the word warmth, and the first meaning was love. So for warmth, contact is needed, thus creativity. So love wants contact, and therefore it's creative. So at the root of consciousness of all creation lies desire, the urge to experience, and desire and imagination foster and reinforce each other. As long as there is consciousness, there must be pleasure and pain. It is in the nature of the I am aware of consciousness to identify itself with the opposites, versus pure consciousness is just harmonious. There is not the pleasure and pain. You'll remember that from a previous seminar. So source is love, spirit, and witness emerges. So let's go back to this image here, this flow chart that Glenda Green had, where love is at the top, spirit on the one side. Love was resonating within spirit, and that is creating these movement of the adamantine particles, which are the elemental particles that creates mass, which creates physical. So here it said, love is the sacred aspect of beingness. Spirit, whole, continuous, and unbroken is the unified field, and the adamantine particles, they are the irreducible components of physical existence, according to Glenda Green's research. The triangle, love is at the top, then spirit resonates to the love, and spirit resonates to love, and love commands the adamantine particles. From this, all creation has occurred. So the love is the important part within the spirit. Within spirit, invigorated by love, manifestation occurs. So now we're doing not too badly with time. I've got a not too long summary and conclusions. But basically, you've seen this one before. The idea here is to know yourself and to know that you are not just a physical, you are using your physical being to experience life in this physical dimension, but you are much more than that. You have a spiritual soul, and you can experience these different dimensions of existence, these spiritual dimensions and higher consciousness. So spiritual development relates to fundamental questions about meaning and purpose of life, which affect everyone. Spiritual development is not dependent on a religious affiliation. It's not about becoming more spiritual. It's about realizing or becoming more and more aware of one's natural innate spirituality. So you're not becoming more spiritual. You already are spiritual, but it's becoming more aware of this as a natural innate spirituality and the abilities associated with it. Hence, learning about spiritual phenomena as natural and normal, not psychotic, natural and normal, these things happen, and various states of consciousness and sensitivity to spiritual energy, these are helpful for understanding your potential. So I liked this caption here as well, consciousness here. And this would be relating to pure consciousness, has no religion, no belief or ideology, no gender, no sexuality, no race, no age, and no nationality. Very consistent with the ideas of Theosophy. And you are a speck of consciousness. We are all from spirit. So here I'm encouraging you when you engage in life, the different things that you do, events that you go to, things that you participate in, do it for joy, for the love of it. And here today, I choose joy. I'm making a deliberate choice here. I'm focusing on the joy that can be seen and felt in life rather than misery. So train your mind to see the good in every situation. And here, another consideration is when you're doing different experiences and tasks. So when you do the task or engage in the experience, and the example is playing the piano in a community concert, when you're doing that for joy, then the outcome of your performance will reflect that, inner and outer. When you coming from a sense of joy, that's going to reflect outward, okay? When you do it with some negative emotion, like emotion and attitude, I'm obligated to play the piano, the outcome will reflect what you have put into it. So that's kind of more like the sad face. So the sense of obligation can make the performance more robotic, mechanical behavior, rather than envisioning the natural fun of music making. Now this one, this is how do we learn, like say Mother Teresa. I got this from somebody else. I used this from the very beginning, was when I was still a probationary psychologist. You have to have 2 years of being a probationary psychologist before you get your full registration and license. And I remember giving this to one of my early clients, and he absolutely loved it, to the point that so often I would give handouts to them that they can take with them, these little inspirational things. And I gave it to this fellow, and a later time when he came back, the next time or the time after that, he came back and he said, you know, that had so much meaning for me that I actually reduced it down in size, printed it off, and I carried it in my wallet with me every single day. So here's what it is, and this is not to be promoting necessarily religion, it's promoting spiritual development. So what it says here is the difference between Jesus, Buddha, Mother Teresa, and us isn't that they have unconditional love and we don't. It's that they don't have anything else. I often use the metaphor of an orange to explain. If you take an orange and squeeze it as hard as you can and ask yourself what will come out, you will say orange juice. If I was to ask, well, why does orange juice come out? You would reply, well, because that's what's inside it. Then if I said, well, what if somebody else squeezed it? Or what if we used a different instrument to squeeze the orange? Or what if the timing was out? You would look at me strangely, because that's irrelevant. When you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. Okay, now relating to you and me, if someone squeezed you, puts pressure on you, or says something you find offensive, and out comes anger and hatred, tension or fear, anxiety or stress, it isn't because of who did the squeezing or what was said. It was because that was inside of you. So finally, it says here, if you take someone who is living at the transcendental, so this is what they qualify as a higher spiritual development, transcendental level of conscious, more loving level, and put them on a cross, crucify them and torture them, that could be anybody, okay, what comes out is what is inside, forgiveness and love. It's about taking responsibility for what is inside, rather than saying it's because this happened, or the way that somebody's said something, and so on. So not necessarily easy to be able to, in really crises cases, it's not necessarily easy to remain that loving self, because as human beings, the lower mental part and the emotional part can come out. But it's interesting when we remind ourselves, if we come from our higher self of love and acceptance, not to be a doormat, but of acceptance. You don't have to like their behavior, as was said earlier, But when we put some of these things into practice, it's a step toward spiritual development, according to transpersonal psychology and I think other philosophies. A couple more slides here. So death is not the end. Upon death of the physical body, you are the same person, minus your worldly concerns. You don't sweat the small stuff. You are lighter, brighter, happier as you leave behind the worries. So your personality will be different because of this. Further, this is again from Maharaj, there can be no transition from consciousness to awareness, because awareness, this is that pure consciousness, for awareness is not a form of consciousness. It's the pure consciousness that we talked about before. Consciousness can only become more subtle and refined, as that is what happens after death. So we let go these other, the mental, the emotional, we let go of these other forms of consciousness as we progress to higher states. As the various vehicles of man die off, the modes of consciousness induced by them also fade. Last couple ones here, and these are really nice. So the power of love is the strongest force in the universe. Love understands all languages, as do smiles. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. And finally, hate begets hate, violence begets violence, toughness begets a greater toughness. We must meet these forces of hate with the power of love, from Martin Luther King Jr. So that is the completion of this particular seminar. So this was, we are all from spirit, the theosophy of how life manifests, higher consciousness in human being, how to understand and interpret spiritual, metaphysical, or transpersonal experiences versus psychotic and mundane. And today was the effects and transformations of spiritual experiences and the power of love, reinforcing that power of love and how life manifests and how we can understand different levels of consciousness and these spiritual experiences is really all a part of self-development and higher self-development and spiritual development. So thank you. And now I think we have a little bit of time for comments and questions if anybody would like to. So I think I will stop sharing the screen. There we are. I can't hear. No. No, you're still muted. You're still muted.
I was so in your presentation. I think I was on another planet. But so thank you so much for this amazing 4-part. And I will now stop the recording, and we're open for questions and comments. Thank you again.
Thank you.